Good evening and welcome to CYC News for the 19th of January 2020 and the 10th of October 17:36 a.m. I'm Susie Michael. In today's headlines, the Russian government resigns after Putin proposes reforms that would weaken his successor. Iran announced arrests over the Ukrainian plane crash. A staggering number of human rights defenders are killed in Colombia. Smoke from Australia's fires will make a full circuit around the world. US hospitals raise alarms about higher than normal RSV cases in young children. And Barcelona topples Real Madrid to become the highest earning soccer club in the world for the first time. To our top story, Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev announced that the entire Russian government is resigning after President Vladimir Putin proposed reforms that would weaken his successor. Putin thanked members of the government for their work, but added that not everything worked out. Putin added that in the near future he would meet with each member of the cabinet. The mass resignation includes Medvedev. The surprise announcement came after Putin proposed constitutional amendments that would transfer some powers from the office of the Presidency to the Prime Minister and Parliament. Putin's critics have suggested that he is considering various scenarios to remain in power after 2024, including the option of becoming Prime Minister with extended powers. In his statement, Medvedev indicated that the government was resigning to clear the way for Putin's proposed reforms. Putin outlined a number of fundamental changes to the constitution, significant changes not only to a number of articles of the constitution, but also to the balance of power as a whole. According to the current constitution, the president needs to secure approval from the lower house of parliament to appoint the head of government, and it is within presidential rights to then appoint all deputies and ministers. Several people have been arrested in Iran over the downing of a Ukrainian passenger plane, as Iranian President Hassan Rouhani warned that those responsible would be punished. The spokesman for Iran's judiciary was quoted by the semi-official FARS news agency as saying that an investigation into the crash had started and several arrests had been made. He did not provide details on how many people had been arrested or what their roles in the incident may have been. Among the arrests is the person who filmed the scene of the missile hitting the Ukraine airplane for further investigation. There was no mention of the person's name or what charges, if any, they are facing. Speaking in Tehran on Tuesday, Rouhani called for the punishment of those behind the downing of Ukraine International Airlines Flight 752. After 3 days of denials, Iran admitted that its military had mistakenly shot down the plane. The admission sparked another wave of anti-government protests in Iran and appeared to expose a rift within the country's leadership. Speaking at a news conference, a spokesman for the Iranian judiciary reportedly said the British ambassador to Tehran should be expelled from the country. It was unclear whether he was sharing his own opinion or if the Iranian government was moving ahead with the expulsion of Ambassador Rob Mackay. Mackay was briefly arrested in the middle of a crowd of protesters on Saturday in what the UK Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab then called a flagrant violation of international law. And further in the Ukrainian passenger plane investigation, Europe is taking the lead in forcing Iran towards a diplomatic de-escalation. If consensus can't be reached, the Europeans are calling time on Tehran's intentional drift from compliance with the nuclear deal by triggering the accord's dispute resolution. In Colombia, human rights activists and community leaders in Colombia are being killed at an alarming rate. The United Nations Human Rights Agency warns it urged the government to make a strenuous effort to prevent attacks on those who are defending fundamental rights. There were 107 activists killed in Colombia last year, with 13 other cases under investigation that could bring the total to 120. The year before, the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights confirmed 115 killings of human rights activists. The single most targeted group was human rights defenders advocating on behalf of community-based and ethnic groups, such as Indigenous peoples and Afro-Colombians. The number of female human rights defenders killed has increased by almost 50% in 2019 compared to 2018. The majority of the killings happened in rural areas formerly occupied by the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, where drug cartels, criminal gangs and newly formed armed groups operate. The UN agency called on authorities to investigate each case of violence and prosecute those responsible, including those aiding and abetting the deadly attacks. Smoke from fires in Australia is expected to make at least one full circuit around the globe and return to the skies over the country, according to NASA's scientists. Using a fleet of satellites, the space agency has been analysing the smoke and aerosols coming from the fires blazing in Australia. Studying smoke clouds from late December, the space agency said that the smoke had travelled halfway across the Earth and affected air quality in other countries. Australia is being ravaged by the worst wildfires seen in decades, with large regions of the country devastated since the fire season began in late July 2019. At least 28 people have died nationwide, and in the state of New South Wales alone, more than 3,000 homes have been destroyed or damaged. The rain that has recently hit parts of Australia has seen some relief, but thunderstorms with lightning are an ever-increasing threat. In health news, paediatricians across the United States are sounding the alarm about unusually high numbers of young children being admitted to emergency departments due to RSV infection, or a common virus that causes cold-like symptoms. Most people recover in a week or two from the infection, but for infants, RSV can be serious. In Ohio, the Cleveland Clinic has reported seeing an unusual uptick in pediatric emergency department visits due to the RSV this cold and flu season. There have been incredibly high volumes of patients coming through hospitals this year, specifically with this virus, and a combination of influenza B as well. Norton Children's Hospital in Louisville, Kentucky, has particularly seen a significant rise in RSV cases this season. In the last 4 months, Norton Children's Hospital has diagnosed more than 800 cases. During the same time period a year ago, they had fewer than 300. In New York, clinics and emergency departments also have seen more children for RSV this season compared to prior seasons, and the season came earlier. And in sport, Barcelona has become the world's highest-earning soccer club, taking fierce rival Real Madrid at the top of Deloitte's Football Money League for the first time. The new study found that Barca generated a record-breaking revenue of €840.8 million last season, becoming only the third club to hold the top position. As a result, Real Madrid slipped into second with €842.9 million, whilst Manchester United remained in third. The report outlines how the Catalan club has reduced its reliance on broadcast revenue deals and shifted its focus on revenue channels within its control. The Spanish giant is expected to retain its top spot for the next year and could become the first $1 billion money league club in future seasons. And that's all for CYC News. A reminder that you can watch this news bulletin again throughout the week on YouTube. I'm Susie Michael from the CYC studios in Sydney, Australia. Have a good night.